not believe it. Whatever they will say, IGP will come here and tell me the regional commander will come here. I will never believe it. And I know sure that my daughter, even at a resident, I said Friday, just Friday. Today is Tuesday, Friday. Somebody rang me that my daughter is at Sotu. You should come. And you have given the file to the police. Why don't you stop? Even after you have known them, why don't you stop and go and investigate? You can come the number that you have given to them and set whether it is true or not. Whether it is 419 or whatever.
Are you still going to pursue the Sulfium angle?
Yeah, you do that. You'll be going, you use our way, our own way to make search. You're still going. Now you have engaged some people. You make the same search to go and find because you believe our granddaughter is alive. What they are doing, they want to cover the whole thing that they have ended the case. Now they say the 4 complex are dead. Therefore, the docket has been closed. But they are lying. It's not closed. It's still open. It's closed from the IGP, but it's not closed to us. The case will be carried on, and it's going to hand them to bring the truth. How can Tiwa tell us that they have found that at Nigeria, they have found it? Look, you see, it's like a draft that they are making our mind to believe. The police doesn't talk like that. You talk on principles and facts. When you say yes, yes, no, no, you don't juggle cases. You are using our daughters and this thing to juggle with the vehicles. Doing that.
And that's a grandfather of one of the kidnapped girls who turned out dead this week, as we have heard from the police, causing a lot of stir across the country. And tonight, the fundamental question we are asking on Ghana Connect is, what are the bitter lessons? Have we learned them? And how do we reform the police on the back of this? Can this be an opportunity to reform the police, introduce a study of kidnapping, which I understand it doesn't exist at all in the wake of all that has happened? And some have called for an inquiry as well into the entire investigation into the kidnapping of these 4 young women who turned out dead. And that's the conversation we're having tonight. You want to connect with us wherever you are tonight. In the studio with me connecting is Superintendent, is a retired, Paul Avui is a retired police officer. Thank you very much, Sup, for your time here on Ghana Connect. Also connecting is Thompson Mensah, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, ASEPA. They've been talking about this.
Alliance for Social
Accountability. Equity. Okay, thank you very much. Frank Singh Wilson Boja is a program manager for governance in women in law and development in Africa. Thank you very much. Yes, it's been a while since we spoke to you. We'll be connecting to the UK and speak to Dr. Justice Tenkebe. Doc, thank you for your time here on Ghana Connect. Thank you for connecting.
Thank you for having me.
Great. He's a criminologist at the Cambridge University. Wherever you are tonight, you can get in touch. The best ways to get in touch always is our WhatsApp line, 0244 340437. You can also join us on Twitter, hashtag Ghana Connect Live. Let me start with you, Dr. Tenkebe. You're connecting from Cambridge, I understand, correct?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I hope you followed the developments on this particular incident. What's your own reading into what happened? What's your own reaction to how it turned out and the announcement that was made by the police this week that, well, the DNA testing came positive for the girls who've been kidnapped?
Well,
hello, Doc. I think we've lost him. We'll try and reconnect. Superintendent, let me come to you. You've been in the service for long. You're a senior police officer. When this is not the outcome you all wanted, but that's what happened eventually. What was your reaction when you heard the announcement?
Well, let me begin by saying good evening to cherished listeners and condolences to the bereaved families. I think that I was disappointed with the manner in which the press conference was carried out by the...
Which were the one this week that announced the outcome of the DNA testing?
I was actually not happy with the manner in which the press conference was carried out, because press conferences, we know, press men are given the chance to ask probing questions, but in this particular case, it never happened. And the whole beginning of the investigations, to the point where the results of the DNA test was communicated to the families, for me, it only shows some lack of leadership failure. That is what I can say now.
When you say communication, that's saying the way the families were informed.
Yeah, because I believe that we have a country in which we have our own traditions and cultures, and I believe that normally these things are conveyed, taking into cognizance the cultural practices of the tribe from which the girls are coming from.
Okay, so I get that, and that's something we're talking about. This whole purpose of this conversation is to drive to the lessons that we are learning from this, if you're learning anything at all. Frank, do you think we are learning lessons? First of all, give me your own take on how this has unfolded and the tragic outcome that we learned this week.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, and to extend some embarrassment to the entire Ghanaian population, that we have lost these young girls through a means that we cannot even unravel and give hope to others that one day, if something of this stuff should happen again, we'll be able to solve it, or we'll be able to even do a better job of especially communicating to the families from the onset to the end and all that. So I am actually siding with Superintendent that in terms of communication, we failed to do due diligence. And I think that the communication was also more political than professionalism. I believe that some of these things, you don't always bow to the pressures from outside. You have to go the professional way. You are a police officer, you are trained to do the professional thing of investigating any issue. So if even superiors are coercing you to do anything, you should be able to give the professional angle by sticking to your ethics and then your professional standards.
You think that wasn't done in this case?
No, that was also absent from the whole thing from the time we all heard about this incident of kidnapping in Takoradi. So I would have wished that the department, especially the CID department, would have kept quiet, but would have done a professional thing of engaging the family always.
Well, the police will tell you that they did engage the family.
But from the responses from the family, you could see that it was not done in a way that they will even accept that really the thing has happened, and then you go out there and make a statement.
Let me connect to the UK and bring back in Dr. Justice Tinkebe, who we lost earlier. Doc, thank you for reconnecting. Do I have you?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, fantastic. Also connecting is Dr. Norman. Thank you, Dr. Norman, for also connecting with us.
Thank you
for
having me.
Fantastic. Dr. Tinkebe, I asked you earlier to share with me your general thoughts from a criminologist's point of view, what you saw unfold this week.
Okay, so I think this week is just a phase in a story, a tragic story, in fact, that reveals a lot that is wrong with our police service. It's a story that tells us what can happen to a police service if it lacks public confidence in what it does. It's a story that tells us what can happen if we fail to create an institution that would allow police officers to do their job. It tells us what happens if we lack mechanisms to monitor, to track police performance, to measure that performance, to help police officers to develop the skills that are required in dealing with victims, especially victims of violent crimes, and how we might bring greater innovation into our police service. If we fail to do all that, Takoradi, it will just be one of many such tragic stories that we would live, unfortunately, to witness. So you saw right from the outset that the police didn't seem to have a clear idea or even process, a standard procedure for dealing with victims. And I think earlier on, myself and others were arguing for a police liaison kind of arrangement.
Yes, with the families.
Not only for this particular incident, but to take advantage of this, to develop this as a procedure. It will not cost additional police power. All you need is that at individual police stations or even at a district, you can identify one police officer who is trained to act as the liaison officer, so that when something happens, this is the person that is liaising with the family, conveying whatever information the police have to this individual. And it could be a great source of intelligence even for the police, because the individuals, the victims and their families might be much more willing to confide in this particular individual, provide them with additional information that will help them to solve crime problems. Policing is about victims, whether today's victims or tomorrow's victims. And if we fail to make them the center of police activity, of police service, then we are in for a really discomforting journey.
Yeah, and Dr. Tenkebig, stay with me on this. Let me bring in Dr. Norman. Dr. Norman, do you agree with the sentiments expressed so far?
Well, yes, to a large extent, yes. But I think there's also another dimension to this discussion that we haven't talked about. I think that we expect a little bit too much from a police apparatus that is not really sophisticated in the kind of crime that they were confronted with. And I think the police itself will be the first to tell you that they are not very happy about the way the investigative approach was developed. Part of the problem, in addition to what Dr. Tinkabi and other speakers have already submitted on the issue, is that they came out with a very bad theory of the crime or the classification of the crime. They decided that it was a crime of kidnapping, and because of that, they rely so much on the diversionary tactics of the perpetrators, particularly in view of the fact that just as this was going on, the two Canadian girls that were kidnapped were found. And so that also created an illusion of hope that maybe if we go with the idea of kidnapping, the theory of the crime being kidnapping, then we can just rest assured, not do too much ground investigative work, and that eventually we will break the back resolve of the perpetrators and find the girls. That, I think, comes with training. And I am sorry to say that we cannot blame the police too much. I always say this, not because I love the police, but those of us in academia, we haven't created the avenue for them to be trained. And so whenever there's crisis, we train doctors, we train lawyers, we train lecturers, but we don't train them the way that they should be trained to do the kind of sophisticated work that today's crime, modern crimes, are quite sophisticated because of distance and the ease of travel and telecommunication, telephonic access, and so on and so forth. So I think sometimes we have to be a little bit careful with the way we castigate the police, because it was the same police that found the Canadian girls.
You raise a very important point, and stay with me on that, because I want to bring in the senior retired police officer who's with us here in the studio on the point you just made there. Superintendent, he makes a point about we probably expecting too much from the police. We're being maybe overly too harsh on them when we haven't given them the tools to sort of deal with this very sophisticated matter. You were trained in Ghana, I suppose, correct? You served at the very senior level for years. It's true, right, that we simply haven't given the police enough, and we're expecting too much from them.
Yes, I think that I saw these things coming as far back as 1993, that I wrote the president, then Jerry Rawlings, that there is a need to set up a commission on the police to look into the operations, the structure, and all that pertains to policing from independence to 1993, so that the police system is restructured, And then I followed up with an article in the Chronicle in 1993 or so, of 95, that the Ghana Police Service is the most neglected public service in Ghana.
In terms of what? In terms of equipment or training?
Because I stated a lot of things. They are ill-equipped, ill-motivated, and the morale is very low.
Hasn't the story changed though in recent years? Because there's a lot of
I don't think it has.
Vehicles that they get.
No, it's not about vehicles. Policing is a philosophy, it's an art. Which is governed by, which is strengthened with experience, and broadened by training and learning. The training and learning has been neglected over the years.
Okay.
You see, so it is, to me, it's leadership, and I'll continue to say it. Leadership without direction and vision, because we are in a situation where society is dynamic. And John Maxwell says everything rises and falls with leadership. So you see that the dynamics are changing, and the police must change.
We're not keeping abreast of.
No, we are not keeping abreast.
But that's a very important point that Dr. Norman and yourself, you've been there for years. You a senior police officer retired. You're confirming what Dr. Norman is saying. Let me bring you Thompson. You've been overly critical of the police. Listening to these, he's a senior police officer who's retired, Dr. Norman as well, tell you that as citizens, we haven't equipped the police enough. And he says it's not about cars, it's not about guns, it's about the training. That's where the thing is. They don't even know some of the sophistication now. And yet we're expecting all this from them. We're simply expecting too much.
Well, thank you, Evans, once again. A very good evening to your listeners.
Aren't you being a little unfair?
I think that I don't like the way the whole program is becoming a lamentation program for the police. I think that there's so much of the police that I think we can discuss on another platform. But at this particular case, I think that the police had failed woefully. The police failed at every step of this case, and I could give you the scenarios, at every step of this case from the beginning of this case. And this is not about sophistication. This has absolutely nothing to do with the equipment or the training. Even things as basic as communication, the police got it wrong. You cannot blame equipping the police. You cannot blame sophistication for the poor communication and how the police had failed to manage this case in a way that it has degenerated to the extent that we are witnessing now. And we cannot blame that on any form of sophistication. Let me give you an example. There seemed to be a tacit complicity of the police in this whole thing that we are failing to look at. Evans, you remember when the accused person was first arrested? The accused person broke jail. with the help of a police officer. We still haven't heard what have happened to the police officer, what sort of investigation has been done so far, And from that point up to the point where the IGP had a press conference, preceding that was the dramatical a discovery of some bones, and the preceding media drama that happened afterwards, until the IGP insensitively announced the results of the DNA without the involvement of the families. If you put all these things in mind, you don't need sophistication to be able to handle these basic things. These are basic policing things that you expect that the police will be able to get it right.
So these are as basic as you said.
As basic. And if at this point the police cannot get these basic things right, then you cannot blame. The police must be able to take responsibility.
Let's test that assumption. Are these as basic as he says they are?
You see, training. For me, the Criminal Investigation Department is it's a branch of the Ghana Police Service, and I think that over the years, they have not been resourced enough to train the men, because from training, when you go to police training school as a recruit, after the training program, probably those who have done a bit well, some are picked to join the CID, and then some are made aides to the CID to carry on investigations and all those types of things. But you see, you must understand crime to be able to investigate crime.
But he's saying that is not what this was about. The fundamentals communicate.
The point is that the fundamentals, the fundamentals must begin with the type of training that are giving the officers.
So it all comes back to that.
Yeah,
okay.
The police training school. You see, if they come out after what we call it, the training program, probably the detective training school, where they are taught probably basic things, and then 4 years, 5 years, no training, and that has been the system.
Yeah, meanwhile, crime is evolving.
It's evolving. In 2004, I wrote an article which was published in the Graphic that you see, tackling the root causes of crime, the role of government, and I stated a lot of things in that article: victim support, fear of crime, how crime is becoming sophisticated, and why we should be changing our patterns of dealing with or tackling with crime.
And you say you haven't seen anything?
No.
But
even though the Criminal Investigation Departments for some few years now have gone on doing some training programs, but the point is, it is limited more to the the urban, the headquarters or whatever it is, but the rural folks are not brought into these things.
I get you.
So when these things happen at the rural areas, they become, incompetent to handle the situation.
In fact, there's a classic example of the same case we're talking about. When the families first reported it, it appeared it was not taken as seriously as it should have, until sort of the media got wind of it, and then it became a big deal for the police subsequently. So the training.
Yes, Evans.
As a citizen, you must concede that is an issue.
The training is important. It's extremely important. Just like any field, any profession, you need constant training to be able to get things right, to be able to improve on yourself. But the police cannot blame lack of training for this blunder. Look at the press conference that was organized by the CID boss. You get an intel, so you don't take your time to confirm the intel, to get the legitimacy of the intel, and to make sure that, whatever intel that you're putting in the public domain, it's right or it's credible. So for you to what informed the decision of the CID boss to hold that press conference and tell Ghanaians that they found the girls and they are alive?
This is a result of multi-agency briefings that she definitely would have come. She would have just come by herself. She would have double-checked this.
Yes. So you can't blame that on training. You cannot say that.
No, but if the intel doesn't check out, it just doesn't check out eventually. I mean, it's just the risk of the job.
Yes, but you can't blame that on training.
Hold on. Sorry, Dr. Norman wants to. Dr. Norman, yes. Dr. Norman.
I think that when you start with a theory of a crime that is kidnapping, then you have an idea that if it's kidnapping, then the subjects are somewhere. But if they had doubted the theory of the crime that they developed because of the over-reliance on the information they got from the perpetrators, the whole thing would have changed right from the beginning. That would have led to a deeper investigation on the areas associated with the perpetrators and accomplices and known entities or friends of the accomplices. So again, training is extremely important in the classification. Critical thinking of the crime is extremely related to training. Because if you are not sophisticated in what you are doing, you cannot develop, you cannot understand the classification. If initially they had classified the crime to be murder or kidnapping and murder, believe me, they would have searched the premises of the perpetrators. But because the theory of the crime was the theory of kidnapping, they thought that the victims have been sequestered somewhere and that eventually we will find them. Hence the statement, we know where the victims are.
Again, Evans, this is also basic. The basic that I'm talking about. You see, the police have searched premises of people who, even just the mere allegations or even on the basis of tapes, the police have searched their premises. And so you arrest a kidnapping suspect and you say that because you did not classify the crime as suspect, you failed to search the person's premises. This is basic. I mean, if, for example, we've had a number of times that the police have raided premises of people for far lesser crimes than kidnapping or for far lesser crimes than what has been reported. And so if you say the police arrest a kidnapping suspect, so I will ask the police, so on what evidence were they prosecuting the guy? On what information?
Because one, they were prosecuted and convicted for breaking jail.
Yeah.
And then they were holding him on suspicion that he was involved in the kidnapping.
Yes, and you failed to search his premises.
Well, I'll come back to you. Sorry, I want Dr. Tenkebe joined us from the Cambridge University. Dr. Tenkebe.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Dr. Tenkebe?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I don't know if you heard the conversation we've been having about the need for police training and the evolution of crime and how our system seem not to have caught up with it and maybe at the heart of there's a disagreement over whether the training, the lack of adequate up-to-date training was the reason for the failures we saw, or police simply being negligent.
Okay, thank you. Look, I think there's a distinction to be made between excusing someone's behavior and then trying to explain or understand the conditions that give rise to that kind of behavior. And there's no question, I agree with some of the views shared, that there's no question that the Ghana Police Service is the one institution that historically has been neglected. When there are military interventions, we immediately thinking about the impact on the development of parliament and the judiciary. No one really thinks about the impact on the police. So the police haven't really had the space to develop as an institution. And it's not just in Ghana. There's no area in the world that you just think that policing is all about common sense, and that it's not, in some respect, a science. So when we talk about training, there's an element, yes, of experience, but also of a social scientific approach to it. So, for example, we know about what is called solvability factors. What factors, when present in a crime scene, makes it much more likely that a crime will be solved? If you train your police service in that way, then as soon as a crime happens, they know what to look for. And secondly, we simply are not doing enough to develop an institution.
I think we've lost him again. Mr. Superintendent.
You see, in every when you go to the rural areas, you see you realize the inadequacy of what we call it, criminal investigation personnel. Probably in some stations you only have one CID officer there, or two at most, in the rural stations, one person handling more than 10, 20 cases at a time. And then you have a station officer who doesn't know anything about criminal investigation, supervising that CID, probably who has not trained for 10 or more years after leaving the detective school. And so what instructions is he expected to give those he's sending to the field? Because we have a chain of command, and when these things happen, it is the station officer and the senior people who probably give the direction. But when they lack that knowledge and experience, all these things will happen.
You raised a very important. It was until the Greater Accra headquarters stepped in and started sending experts and the more qualified persons from the CID headquarters to the Western region that they began to make real progress. So all the time that the case was being handled locally in the Western region police, it stalled. I mean, we all saw that. I, for example, had the shock of my life doing an interview with the police commander who for months had not even sent out the pictures of the kidnapped girls. I'm thinking that is one of the fundamental things you do when a person is kidnapped, because then you can get the public involved. And it was at that night that the pictures first went out. So I think the point you make is so fundamental. But you say...
I have a little issue even with the police, still on the police again. When the issue came up, the guy was arrested, no search was conducted in the house and all that, until we find bones in the house. Then we realized that one of the children had her dress in the house.
That is not entirely accurate. In fact, when the suspect Udutut first broke jail, when they rearrested him, the room in which they found the clothes there of one of the girls. It was very recent that they found that, let's look into this, let's check the house. And then they found additional materials there.
From the onset, when the guy was arrested, you should first of all do a search around every facility that you suspect the guy had been.
Yeah.
To be able to
do a raid in the entire neighborhood.
Yes, of course.
Where the person has been arrested.
All these things were not done. The second thing is that children, if they are teenagers, any child below 18 years is a child. So if such a thing had happened, then we need to go back to history and find out, had this thing happened?
Yeah. But here's the trick. And Dr. Norman, I need to bring you to you on this. I understand that as we speak, there's no aspect of the police training manual that teaches anything about kidnapping or how to handle such a case. I mean, This is probably the first major one that has become so high profile that they've had to deal with. Is that something that you know of?
This is what my understanding is, but I haven't viewed the training manual completely. I've viewed parts of it.
So it appears to me that the police in itself will be learning on this one. This will be probably learning on the job when it comes to this particular matter. So it comes back to what can this. I know this is tragic, but can it also be an opportunity to reform, to learn the lessons? And what are the lessons?
I believe so. But this is a learning process for the whole country, for judges, for lawyers, for reporters, and for the police in particular, but also for the citizens. When you are confronted with a case of kidnapping, you don't try to take the matters into your own hands because you don't have the capacity to handle the issue. Right now, what I want the nation to focus on is that if we are going to prosecute the perpetrators that have been arrested, the police needs to change the theory of the crime to that of kidnapping and murder, so that they can then fit the evidence to the crime. Because there is a bit of circumstantial evidence, the discovery of the bodies in a cesspool, in a septic tank. It's all circumstantial, but they have to be linked to the crime itself. It has to be linked to the activities of the perpetrators. So they have a lot of work to do, and we should concentrate the energy in helping them to do a better job so that these guys don't walk out of jail, because if we are not careful, we will not be able to effectively prosecute them, except if we run them through kangaroo courts. And I know this country will not do that.
Thompson, back to the point. This is the same police that rescued the Canadian girls by themselves. They found the place using CCTV cameras. They traced it. They did it without Canadian assistance. So there is something there that we can build on.
Yes, Evans. I mean,
in spite of the challenge with the fall.
Yes. I've been listening to a myriad of challenges that are confronted with the police. We know they have challenges, they have difficulties, they need training and all that. But we are forgetting that in the midst of these challenges, the police have also executed very high-profile and sophisticated cases. They've solved sophisticated cases in this country, which we are aware, in the midst of this same myriad of challenges. And so we cannot create the impression as if the police are incapable or the police cannot work. For me, I have absolute confidence in the police that if the police want to deliver, they can deliver. I mean, what has continuously become the problem or the Achilles heel of the police is political interference, and that came to the fore in this particular matter. We saw the political interference right from the beginning, and for me, I don't know why they transcended this matter into politics in the first place.
How do you mean?
Yeah, how the political parties got involved, and we heard,
But isn't that what we've done to this country? Everything else is politicized. Even murder is politicized. It's just the way of.
That is the citizens. Citizens can do that, but I think the police should have remained focused. The police should have, insulated themselves from all these comments that come from outside and remain focused and not be pushed around into doing things which later harm their credibility in handling this matter. And that's what came to haunt them at the last minute.
I want to focus a bit more now on what should the lessons be and how do we reform the police so that when the next big kidnapping case comes around, the police will be ready to deal with it and avoid the mistakes that we all know happened in the case of the 4 missing Takoradi girls. Dr. Norman, stay with me as we interrogate that particular aspect. But I want to hear from you, our listeners who've been joining us on our many social media platforms. Yeah, and what are the listeners saying?
Uncle George from Kumasi says, Evans, can you imagine if the kidnapped girls are children of the police officers or any government official? Will the police handle it the way they did? I wept deeply in my heart when the IGP broke the news about the DNA. For me, I don't believe the DNA reports. They just want to put the issue at rest, and I believe the girls are still alive.
Okay, so that's something that the families have said as well.
Yes. George Okain from Mile 7 says, in this matter, the role of the family in terms of what information they give to the police and their role in terms of bad parenting is also being ignored. Another one here says, training is important. My friend from the US had a fracas with a Ghanaian police officer because he did not understand that Americans write the month first in a date. My friend had to succumb to them eventually because they would not even allow themselves to be educated. Akosia from Tema says, Evans, until Joy Midday News prioritized this story, which was the second time I heard it on the station, I believe the police wouldn't have taken this seriously. Why is this country becoming like that? Until the media takes on a case, nothing happens. Oh, Ghana, my motherland. That's Akosia. Scholastica from Ho says, look, Evans, where are the police officers who allegedly assisted Udotek Wills to escape the first time? Transferred, we are told. Really? That's Ho from Scholastica from Ho. Afote Nashoman says, Evans, my honest view on this matter is that if the Takoradi police took the case seriously from the initial stages, then we won't be here. We have a police force that treats serious things with contempt. You report an assault case and sometimes they are the first to laugh at you. It's an attitude problem, even though the equipment are not there. And let me take this one from Mami says, the police simply toyed with the emotions of the families and Ghanaians. I don't believe them. That's Mami from Efie Kuma. And in Takoradi, this one says, no, let me go to this one. It says, I wonder why government after government think buying vehicles is the only way to equip the police, even though it's important. And why are the police chiefs and security chiefs not talking? Where are the CCTV cameras promised? We need to be serious.
Those are some of your views on our social media platforms on this conversation. Let's focus a bit more on so you've written a lot about police reforms on the back of this particular kidnapping story, which has ended with the death of the girls. What are the lessons, and how do we go about learning them in a way that affects actual policing in Ghana? What are the key lessons for you?
But I think reorientation is very key because you know the history of Ghana. I mean, after independence or before independence and after independence, you know the periodical military takeovers have not enabled the police to reform. To reform to.
Well, we had the longest period of stability since 1992.
Because even they came from the colonial era before independence, and that mentality, militaristic mentality, was there. And then now you see how the fundamental human rights and liberties of citizens have been trampled upon, even in this democratic dispensation. The police brutalities and all that goes on and on and on. So for me, the first basic step is a complete reorientation and change of mentality of policing, because we are policing in a democracy, and they must understand the bolts and nuts of policing in democracy. If the orientation is not done, and the police refuse to copy the military in appearance, in mentality, I mean, we will have a long way to go. That is what I say for now.
I think that there is also the need to broaden the personnel structure. For instance, this is an issue of psychological trauma. So I would have wished that we had as many psychologists, whether clinical or any aspect of psychology or psychologists, who are part of the police system, to be able to engage families of victims who fall into such categories of crime.
Soft policing.
Yes, it's very important. So by the time the serious announcement will come, the people
they have been prepared mentally,
psychologically to meet that. And I think this is something that they should include. Then, if you go to even the domestic violence and victim support unit, you not see such things there where the trauma is even most. You not see such things, and we need to reform that.
Thompson.
Evans, basic, very fundamental. The position of the law must change. We need an independent police service. Until that is done, the police will still be toyed around by politics and this unnecessary interference, as we saw came to the fore, in this particular matter. That must change. Specifically on this matter, I think that the police officer who aided the suspect to break jail must be interdicted from the police service. The CID boss must resign from her position. She's lost every credibility. Imagine this same person, how she's going to deal with another case, not kidnapping.
Why do people say she might resign? Because she made an announcement?
She's lost all credibility.
Is it because she made an announcement?
Yes, of course.
But you remember that you take notes that she was speaking for the police service. She wasn't speaking in her capacity as Mami
as a
Tewa.
head
Evans,
of the
Evans, I
CID.
think that they should have
As a
used
head
professional
of the CID.
communicators.
As a head of the CID.
There's a
I mean,
director
so-
of public
So what we are holding
Yes.
her
As the
accountable.
head, she's
But
the head
there's
of the
IGP.
investigative unit of the police.
But there is the IGP.
Yes, and I'm coming. And the IGP must also put his job down. He must also resign. The IGP also, because later you see that all the top hierarchy of the police that handled this case failed the family woefully. And I don't think that we must continue keeping these people in their positions. They've lost every sense of public
And
trust.
in terms of reforming the police itself
Yes,
going
and-
forward,
and-
which is a key thing you want to see,
I think that
or learning from the this episode, what is the thing that we should learn from this and implement?
I think we should broaden the horizon of the police, like they've suggested. Training is very important. The police need to be
Upgrade
trained.
the training.
Upgrade the training, retool them, and give them all the necessary support. But must be made sure that the police become independent.
Okay.
What will solve the problem for the police is an independent police
Okay,
service.
let me bring in Dr. Norman. What are the lessons and what should the police be doing now on the back of what we've seen have been the challenges with this particular case?
I think that the police should engage the public more about the science, the forensic science, and DNA. Until somebody can prove to me that the samples were not collected properly, that they were contaminated, we should leave the finding as they are, because the police is not going to distort the science of the DNA just to suit their whims and caprices. So they need to engage the public more and put to silence those who are challenging the authenticity of the DNA results.
Dr. Norman, thank you very much for connecting. Also connecting from the UK earlier, Dr. Tankebe, criminologist at the Cambridge University. Frank, thank you very much always for connecting. He also Thompson with the Alliance for Social Equity and Public Accountability. That's a SEPA. And Superintendent Paul Avui, retired. I'm grateful that you connected. Enjoy the rest of your evening, ladies and gentlemen.